Former President Trump meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson for the first time since Trump clinched the GOP nomination. The two discussing election integrity as well as other important issues facing the nation. This at a critical moment for Johnson's speakership. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What can you tell us about their meeting thus far?
Good evening to you, Steve. So right now, former President Trump and Speaker Johnson are holding a press conference at Trump's Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, and the topic is supposed to be election integrity. But Trump started off the press conference by talking more about the border, including migrant crime that we have seen cases recently, and also he's been talking about election interference and why the two issues are connected. Speaker Johnson says that's because, and Trump says, the rise of illegal immigrants might have contributed to the results of the 2020 election, and that is why Speaker Johnson is saying saying that election integrity is tied to the lack of border security at the UN southern border. He further says that some states actually are prohibited from making a rule that make people prove that they are a citizen before they get to vote, and that is exactly what Speaker Johnson this morning told reporters, and that election integrity is the most important issue on Americans' mind right now, and also because this is the issue, and that's why we are trying to focus it on it more. And meanwhile, all this is as former President Trump and Speaker Johnson are meeting at this crucial moment for Speaker Johnson's leadership, and that is as he's facing an ongoing threat from Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene to remove him. Tensions are growing both over Speaker Johnson's handling of government funding, but also over the recent controversial FISA bill that just got passed today with Johnson's backing. And now that's a moment when Speaker Johnson really needs that public support from former President Trump, and the two now appearing together on the same podium shows some of that. And meanwhile, we're also seeing President Biden's campaign responding to today's meeting between Trump and Biden. Biden's campaign put out a statement citing the chairman of the House's January 6th committee, saying that today's meeting is a sham meeting, and that again should remind the American public that Trump is a threat to democracy. And Biden's campaign also released a video saying that both Biden and Johnson hold extreme MAGA agenda, especially on abortion. Meanwhile, former President Trump today also responding to that Biden attack, saying how Democrats are actually more extreme. Trump posted on Truth Social saying, quote, "Democrats are the extremists. They support abortion up to the moment of birth." So we are now seeing this intense argument playing out between Trump and Biden over the issue of abortion. Trump again today again stating his stance on the Arizona Supreme Court ruling on a near total abortion, saying it went too far, adding that there should be at least 3 exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Steve.
And Iris, tell us what President Biden and former President Trump are going to be up to next week.
Sure. So both of them are really trying hard to win over some working class Americans. Trump will be campaigning in the battleground state of Pennsylvania tomorrow on Saturday, and that's exactly where President Biden will spend most of his next week campaigning as well. And right now, we're also expecting Trump to be sitting in a courtroom in New York next week for his hush money trial next week. Steve.
NTD's Iris Tao reporting live from the North Lawn of the White House. Thank you, Iris. And to get some perspective on those reforms that went into the bill and what might happen if it lapsed, I spoke with Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon. Congressman Don Bacon, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Congressman, just duked it out there in the House chamber. I finally got FISA passed through. You know, you're on the Armed Services Committee, former Air Force general. From your perspective, what would it have meant had FISA lapsed for United States national security?
That would have been terrible for national security. FISA, the 702 program, that's different than the Title I FISA. A lot of people conflate it. That was part of the problem in this debate. Title I's more investigating for DOJ and FBI against Americans. This was focused on foreign adversaries. So the 702 FISA has done more to stop terrorism, strikes against America, and we learn more about what Russia and China, Iran, North Korea. So 702 FISA is critical for our national security.
Now, Speaker Johnson urged members that were, up in the air or against it to go into the SCIF and get that classified briefing to find out why it's important. Do you think that this played a role for some of the more hardliners once they maybe got that classified briefing, like Bob Good, to loosen up on it?
Yeah, I heard a few said that it made a difference in their vote. I think part of this was demagogued to a bit, or maybe I think there was confusion because of the Title I FISA. But I also want to remind your listeners that what the Intelligence Committee did and the Judiciary Committee, they added 51 reforms to the 702 FISA here to ensure that the Fourth Amendment rights are further protected to the point where if an FBI agent violates it, he could go to jail. So that was added in there. So I think they did a good job trying to tighten it up, but yet preserve the capabilities of FISA. So I thought it was a good, well-balanced bill. And on the other end, on the First Amendment, the argument was, well, if you send a note to a terrorist, you still got to get a permission from the courts. If you're sending a note to a terrorist, we should know pretty quick. It's, the Fourth Amendment's unreasonable search and seizures, right? To me, if you're sending a note to Osama bin Laden, or you're sending a note to Putin, or whoever it may be, I think that's not unreasonable to know what you're sending to a known terrorist.
So that was actually going to be my next question for you. If you could maybe elaborate a little bit on some of those amendments and alterations, just to kind of put people at ease that may have been afraid that it would be misused, but there are some fail-safes, you're saying.
Well, there was 51 added protections put in by the Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee that they agreed to. So the bill, the baseline bill, was already much better than what we had. And in fact, the 51 changes would have prevented what DOJ did to President Trump 4 years ago. So we felt good. The abuses that we know of, the changes that were made in the bill, attack those violations and would prevent that happening again. Now, I think we should be monitoring this. So I voted for the amendment that we should look at get updates every quarter, just to see that the FBI and the DOJ are adhering to the law. But the main issue was, if you send an email to a known terrorist, should our intelligence be able to read that email? Or do we have to go through a court 3 or 4 days later and get permission? I think that's not an unreasonable search and seizure. If you send a note or an email to a known terrorist. Now, if they say, okay, that's a bad note, that guy looks very suspect, now you need to get approval from the courts to look at all your other emails and anything else that may be out there. That's what's in this current bill. And I think that's a fair balance and it protects our country. If this would have gone down, we would have been much more vulnerable to a terrorist strike, and I think the citizens would rightfully be unforgiving on that we would have failed at our basic duties. And here's the other thing, if it would have gone down, we would like to have had to extend the last FISA, which would have had no protections on it, right? Because it's so important for our national security to have FISA, the 702 FISA.
You're chairman of the Quality of Life panel. You've just launched an initiative to really try to improve service members' quality of life. This is a bipartisan effort. Tell us about some of the work that you're doing here.
So we targeted a pay raise for E1 through E4, a 15% pay raise, which would get them above the SNAP level. We're going to reinstate that 5% of their housing allowance, so they'll get 100% of their housing allowance. We're going to put money in barracks and dormitories. We're also going to examine the housing allowance, and it's going to be more transparent. If we hit what that cost of that area is, and we right-size that up, that's going to help out the people living off base. But that money also goes to the on-base housing, so more money goes to the on-base housing. So we have a great plan, and our military men and women should know that Congress has their back. And we've had to sort of force the military on this. They were telling us everything's all right. What we found, we opened up the hood and we said, no, it's not.
Congressman Don Bacon, really great work. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
The Biden administration saying today it is forgiving yet another round of student loan debt to the tune of $7.4 billion. The move will impact some 277,000 borrowers. It's part of a program enacted by the White House to make it easier for some specific groups of borrowers, like public sector workers, to qualify for loan forgiveness. The program also includes a repayment plan that creates a shorter pathway to loan forgiveness for many lower-income borrowers. Republicans have sharply criticized this program, arguing the president is transferring the cost of student loan debt to taxpayers who chose not to go to college or who already paid for it themselves. In total, the Biden administration has authorized the cancellation of $153 billion in student loan debt for nearly 4.3 million people. That's more than 9% of all outstanding federal student loan debt. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.